Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is always a privilege to be here. And I think the cool thing about being connected to this family for so long is, bro, you look different than you used to. Like you guys are growing and changing, and it's exciting. It's exciting from where you've been to what the Lord is doing in this family, in this congregation. So know that regardless of where you're at in the story of living free, when you've jumped on, like the Lord is doing meaningful things here. This is a fantastic place to plant and to be a part and to lean in and to serve. And maybe I can just say this, Pastor Ricky, maybe you can put a little extra in the offering for me. And even when correction needs to come, this is a place to receive that. This is a place to be discipled and to grow into who the Lord is calling all of us to be as you make incredible impact in the city of Portland and beyond. It is a privilege. I am so grateful for our friendship and for all those years and all the time together. And if you guys have the privilege of spending any time with Pastor Ricky, I know his calendar is full, know that you get a gift when you're with him. If you get 10 minutes in the lobby or 3 seconds as you're passing, know that any impartation that he has to offer to you it's rich, and you would be wise to lean into his investment and what he has for you. And part of what my job is that I'm around the state and even a little bit beyond that, and pastors like you are not the norm. To find men that really want to invest, and you've got a gift for sure in the Morrises. So all that blubbery stuff over, let's move on. My name is Jonathan, and my wife and I, Alejandra, is on the front row. We serve as Chi Alpha missionaries, and our home is at Austin Peay State University. I don't live in a dorm. We have a home, but that's where I live, and I spend most of my time investing in students there. And it really is a beautiful and incredible place. Now, 15 years later, I'm 41, and I still spend time with 18-year-olds. And we play late into the night, and we celebrate. And it's kind of interesting how things have changed over the years, but more and more young men are looking at me, and they're like, can you teach me what it means to be a man? Would you help me know how to do a budget? Like very real things that students that are growing up without fathers and without mothers in these generations, that we as lovers of Jesus get to do that for them. We get to sow and we get to invest. And somebody asked me, so what's next, Jonathan? What's next? And honestly, bro, after 15 years, I sincerely love it more today than when I started. Isn't that true? Alejandra, is it like we just, the longer we do it, the more it's like, man, this is rich. This is sweet. And essentially what we do in a nutshell is we introduce students to Jesus. Because unlike the last maybe 10 years or so, students are coming to us without having ever heard anything about the gospel. It's not a new thing for them to have heard nothing. So they haven't heard of Noah or Abraham, and they've heard that Jesus hates gay people, but that's about it. The majority of students don't know that Jesus loves gay people. Jesus loves all kinds of people, so much so that he laid his life down for them, that they don't have to pay the price for all the dumb stuff they've done, that they can have hope and life in him. They've not heard that. We hear it dozens of times. They've never heard it, but we have the privilege of sharing that with them and then helping them follow Jesus, because not everyone that says that they're a Christian actually is following Jesus. So we invite them into a process of discipleship with us, and then the hope is that they're gaining tools so that then they could make disciples of others. So I believe that as we follow after Jesus, I know this is surprising, but we do the things Jesus did. And that was make disciples of other people. So we make disciples that make disciples, and it's been the most incredible ride. My kids are in children's church. We've got a 6-year-old, Cole, who is going to be taller than my wife probably in a pretty quick amount of time. She used to measure them with arm lengths. She's like, oh, look, you're this big, or oh, look, you're this big. She's like, ah. So he's growing, and we're loving being parents. Our next one, Amada, she is 3. She is nowhere near my wife's size. She's probably about this size, but she probably has sass equal to this side of the auditorium. So if anyone has tips on how to manage a little girl full of that, just let me know. And then our youngest is Amiel. He's 2. And he was a surprise, but we have been so incredibly encouraged by him. He laughs at anything. Anyone like to just have someone to always laugh at your jokes or anything? He just auto laughs at everything. I'm poking him, come here. It's fantastic. He really has been a joy. He wasn't the plan, but the Lord knew that we needed an Amiel in our life. So we're grateful to be your missionaries at Austin Peay State University. Without your partnership and your investment, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. You guys are making a difference in the lives of hundreds of university students that you'll never see. You'll never see them. But still, faithfully, as you give and you sow into Living Free and partner with us, you're reaping the eternal rewards of that. So thank you for being a part of making disciples that make disciples on the campus and even around the world. I have thousands of hours of stories. So if you would like some after the service and even come back tonight, would love to share about the sweet things that you're giving and your sacrificial prayers are accomplishing. This morning, I want to talk just a little bit differently than Chi Alpha. I want to just share some things that the Lord has put on my heart for you guys. And maybe it starts with, what would you think of me? Because we're really good at being judgmental. What would you think of me if I told you as a child, my parents trained me to cut open this particular animal, dig through its carcass, find a piece of its internal structure, and then rip it out? And then take a friend and snap it in half. And if it snapped just right, then maybe some of my deep desires would be granted. What would you think? Bro, this man crazy. We about to get up out of here. Shoot, lock the doors. Ushers, lock the doors. They're not going anywhere. It's a weird tradition, isn't it? The idea of digging for a wishbone, and then you and your brother, your sister, or another grown man, whatever, trying to snap. And something that's interesting is where did that even come from? Who thought, what's a good idea? Let's dig through this bird. Let's grab a bone. Give it to children. Tell them to snap it. I think it's so strange that sometimes we just start doing things because we've always done them. We have these traditions or these preferences, and we do it because we've always done it, but we don't necessarily know why or where it started. It's just kind of part of it. The psychological field calls these learned behaviors. That you can be exposed to a particular thing for an extended period of time, and as a result, you begin to just adopt that behavior as a part of your normal, natural rhythms of life. You kind of just do it because someone else did it, and then someone else before them did it, and we just kind of do it. And one of the beautiful but kind of complex things about humans is that sometimes we pick up those learned behaviors on purpose, right? I work with students in an educational setting. They want to learn these behaviors, but then sometimes we don't. We didn't purpose to learn this behavior. Do any of you guys talk to other drivers while you're in the car? Hey, you get out of it. Dude, I do that all the time. I don't know why I started doing that. I know they can't hear me. I don't really want them to hear me, but I just need to say something to them while we're on the road, and they're coming in on my lane. It's you know what I'm saying? It's a weird learned behavior. Where did that come from? I have no idea, but we do it, and it's just kind of a part of it. So some of them are conscious, and some of them are unconscious, but we're being kind of trained to behave and have certain traditions and certain preferences is maybe a more common way to think about it. We have traditions and we have preferences, and we don't always know why, and we don't always know where they come from. So you might not be surprised to know that this has been a part of humanity for a really long time. Even back to the days of Jesus, people were in this process of adapting learned behaviors, traditions and preferences coming a part of their life that they may not know why or even where they came from. And this morning, I'd like to take some time and share one of my absolute favorite stories from Scripture. This is, bar none, my favorite miracle that Jesus does, and it's a big one. It's his first one, and I think that it's a little unusual seeming, but it's incredibly important. So for our time this morning, I'd like us to just begin to walk through that, and I hope that by the time we reach the end, that you've got something that's going to challenge and take away and equip you as you move forward. So the story begins in John 2, and I'll summarize the first 5 verses for you. So basically, someone is getting married, and Mary, Jesus' mother, goes to that wedding. So she shows up at that wedding, and in Jewish culture, weddings were a big deal, right? We have like a 2 or 3 hour ceremony reception, and we're out, right? But in Jewish culture, that wedding, bro, she started on Monday. Here we go Tuesday, here we go Wednesday, here we go Thursday. They keep going, like multiple days, 4 to 5 days of celebration for these Jewish, very ceremonial, very symbolic weddings. So here Mary is at one of those things. She's connected to the bride and her family, and I don't know why, but they come to Mary and they're like, "Hey, Mary, we're running out of some sips, some drinky drink. We're running out of wine." And I don't know why they came to Mary, but Mary's like, "I got this, I got Jesus." So she comes over here to Jesus, and then that's where our story picks up in verse 2. So if you are following along, my recommendation, like in a paper Bible or something, go ahead and block out verses 6 through verses 11. That's where we're going to be. And then as we move through, there are a couple things I'm going to ask you kind of like to underline and keep track of. There's some of the significant parts of us really getting a good takeaway of this time. So Mary comes to Jesus, and then our story picks up in verse 6. It says, "Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, 'Bro, fill these jars.' So they did, all the way up. Then he told them, 'Now draw out some water and then take it to the master of the banquet.' So they did. And the master of the banquet, it says he tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He didn't know that they had got it from these gross jars, but the servants knew. The servants knew where it came from. And then the coordinator, this master of the banquet, it says that he pulls the bridegroom aside, right? And he said, 'Bro, what are you doing? Don't you know how to throw a party? This wine is really good. It's arguably the best wine. Don't you know that when you throw a party, you bring out the best wine first? We're like in day 4, and now you're bringing out the best wine. Ordinarily, we bring out the best, and then after the folks have had a little too much to drink, then you bring out the cheaper stuff. But you've saved the best until now,' it says in verse 10, then 11. This is the first of his miraculous signs. Jesus performed in Cana in Galilee, and thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him." Man, what a fun story. What a fun story. Right now, though, it kind of sounds like Jesus just threw a big party. True? Basically, he provided wine for all of these people. Does that not sound strange to you? Everybody would like run up and just be like, "Jesus, I just need more wine." Like, it sounds crazy that he would do something like that, but I think that there are some details that'll help us understand this story and provide some new light to us, because honestly, right now, it sounds like he just threw a big kegger, and that doesn't sound like Jesus, and why would he start his whole ministry with that? So the first detail that I want us to kind of hone in on are these empty stone jars. It says that each one of them are 20 to 30 gallons, right? So this is 27 gallons. Cool? So if you're following along and you want to underline the stone jars, so this container would hold roughly 27 gallons of some kind of liquid, yeah? How many of those containers does it say that there are? 6, right? So then 6 of these big boys, right? All full or empty as the situation may dictate. According to Jewish law, they believe something kind of unusual. They believe that people would become symbolically dirty on the inside by touching something on the outside. Let's recap. You touch something on the outside, it makes your soul dirty. That sounds weird. But in order to clean your soul, bro, you just need to get a little dub-dub, scrub-dub-dub, and then you're good. They believe that if you will wash the outside, it will somehow clean the inside. And they did it religiously. Whenever they were getting ready to eat or to do anything ceremonious or important, they believed that they could cleanse the yuck the funk. Could you imagine after you sin, you just go, ha ha ha. So weird, right? But that was normal. That was how they rolled. Do you know what's interesting, though, is Jesus is using one of the Jews' foolish preferences, something that they really got hung up on that actually didn't really matter. Does washing your hands make your soul clean? Okay, just want to make sure we're all in agreement on that. People are like, wow, that's amazing. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I promise you it doesn't do it. But Jesus is using something that the Jews got hung up on to make a point. And while we don't really know what that point yet is, it makes me kind of wonder, are there foolish things that I get hung up on that don't ultimately really matter? Get honest with yourself for a second. Is it possible that you and me, that we have preferences, we have unessential traditions or behaviors or whatever, that in certain situations can keep us from being who God wants us to be? Is that possible? Do you know what else is interesting? These jars that it's talking about, they're empty, aren't they? In the story, they're empty. All those Jewish people, these were a big deal. It's like your sister brings her sister, brings their sister, brings their best friend Betty, brings her sister. Like, these weddings were a big deal. The whole people came. So lots of people at this wedding, and not one of them objected to not being able to wash their hands? That's interesting. Oh, Jonathan, it's just a wedding, man. Chill out. They're trying to have a good time. They're getting loose. It's fine. No, bro. At these weddings, they were incredibly ceremonious. Here in the West, we're trying to just have like glamorous social media pictures at weddings. But in Jewish culture, each one of these steps and these processes, deeply spiritual, deeply symbolic, they followed all of this stuff to the T. No one was getting married unless we did all the things, because they all meant something to them. So they didn't just forget that important tradition. What I think might actually be the point is that this washing was really more about appearances than about heart. More about preference than about God. So it wasn't really as big of a deal as they made it. Yuck. Do I do that? Do I sometimes have preferences that I act like are the biggest deal in the world, but something else shiny comes along, and I'll just kind of neglect that for this? I'm willing to like yell and scream that the house isn't clean, but if there's something else that's keeping my attention, then that's not really a big deal. These details, the fact that there are these big stone jars and that they're empty, make this story hugely important. There are some things that are about to come, and we've not even gotten to the miracle yet. So we see that there are some things kind of brewing and happening. You see, this is Jesus' first miracle. This miracle lays groundwork for all of the other things that he's doing with his life. There's no story of like him raising chickens back to life on the farm before he got to the moment. This is his moment. This is when he starts. And the things that he's doing here are hugely important. They're going to give us a clearer picture of who he is and what he's come to do. But I wonder, before we jump into any of that, are there kind of self-honoring preferences or traditions in our lives that maybe would allow ourselves to be read into this story a little bit? Because it's really easy for me to be like, those Jews, they were terrible. They didn't even wash their hands. Like, it's easy for me to do that, right? But is it important before we move forward to be able to get a little bit honest and read ourselves into the story? Are there things, are there preferences that maybe we say, this is actually a really big deal, but Jesus actually says, bro, that's an empty preference. It's an empty tradition. The next thing that I want you to underline as we move through this story is the word good wine. It's towards the very, very end, and you see that he says that they bring out good wine at this point, but you've saved the best. So underline good wine. What makes wine good by today's standards? I don't know about in the rest of the world, but on the university and the students that I work with, what makes alcohol good is its ability to mess them up. They're not drinking it for subtle hints of rosemary. They're not doing that. They're doing it because they want to be inebriated. They want to forget their issues. They want to have a good time and get loose. Looking for children before I just start saying things. They want to become freer in their relationships with other people. That's why they're drinking alcohol instead of Kool-Aid. If they just wanted to have a nice taste, they drink Kool-Aid. So oftentimes, by the world's standards, what makes alcohol particularly good is the ability that it has to change the way you feel. How alcoholic is this? So in my context, the better the alcohol, the stronger the alcohol, the better it is. So this might be a shocker for you, but in Jesus' time, that was not the case. That was not the standard. That was not what they used to esteem as good or not. Have any of you guys ever made jam or jelly or helped your grandma or your mom make jam or jelly? One of you. Let's get honest, folks. Okay, thank you. We can participate. Well done. Yay. Yay for jam and jelly. Yay for grandmas and moms all over the world. Me too, okay? So when my parents moved here from the city, my mom wanted to be country, and she felt like canning was a thing to do. So I remember my mom's process for making jelly. And essentially, what I've learned is that the people back in the day, in Jesus' time, their process for making wine wasn't too different from my mom's process of making jelly. So basically, whatever fruit my mom was going to use, she would gather up that fruit, and in their case, grapes, gather it up, and then it had to be broken down. The fruit, just as itself, needed to be broken down either by heating and kind of stirring it or kind of crushing it down. That was essentially how it would work with my mom making her jelly. And if she was making jelly, she only wanted the juice. She didn't want the pulp. She just wanted the juice from whatever fruit that she was squeezing, pressing, whatever. So then what would have to happen is after she'd broken it all down, she would need to sort all of the pulp and the flesh. She'd need to separate it from the juice. And bro, that can be a pain. It can be a pain. That was my job. So she throws this lump of goo and some cheesecloth, twist it. I'm like, again. And if you've ever done this, you know that it takes a minute. That's a minute. So I'm twisting. And the same thing with them. They didn't want a grape smoothie. They wanted wine. So they needed to separate all of that pulp and all of that stuff so that they could get this really robust grape drink. I think at this point it might be helpful to kind of show you something. I need a couple volunteers. Let's see. Yes, thank you. Fantastic. Go ahead and come up. I need two more. You look like you'd be a great volunteer. Come on up. Thanks for sitting near the front. Awesome. And then you, sir, you look like you'd love to be a volunteer. Come on up. All right, so what we're going to do is I need to have one person be my cup holder. Maybe you want to be my cup holder? So as soon as she'd make a what?
She'd make a great one.
For a cup holder?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, you've been trained in all things cup holding. Can I see your certification? No certification? Okay, it's fine. We'll let you do it this one time, but get that certification. All right, so if you'll stand right here and face everybody, and then you'll just hold this. This is your job. She doing a great job? That's a great job. Yeah. Okay, awesome. If you'll come stand right here, facing this way, and if you'll get on the other side facing him. Cool. So what we're going to do is these are for you. These are for you. Whoop. What I need you to do, scoot that way just a little bit. You too, sir. Beautiful. We don't want this getting crazy and getting on Pastor Ricky's carpet. He would flip out. So I want you to hold that cup out for these two gentlemen, and what I'm going to ask you to do is one at a time, I want you to work together to squeeze one grape at a time to get as much juice in that in 30 seconds. So friends, what I need you to do is take out your phone and start the clock. I need 30 seconds on the clock, and we're about to see how this can go. So It's not 15 grapes mushed against your partner, but it's like one in your hand. And then you're going to have like the pulp you with, just throw it on the ground, right? We prepared for this, okay? So squeeze juice, drop on ground. You've got 30 seconds. Are you ready? Yep. 3, 2, 1, start the time. You trained for this? Yeah. Yeah, they're ready. They're ready. Let's go. Do it. Get that pulp out of that juice. Come on now. Do we have any hype music in the back? Can we do something a little? I mean, this is good, but, you know. All right. Yeah. Let's go. Uh-oh. That's a gift. I brought that for you. There you go. Looking good. Okay. I'm not sure there's actually any juice in that cup yet. I brought this for you. You guys are doing great. You make it look easy. Okay, you've done such a terrible job. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see. Here you guys go. I thought about you. Go ahead and use that. All right, after the pulp is removed, there we go. Hey, chill out and stay there. Yay! Give him a hand. All right, you guys can get out of here. Go ahead and use some of those wet wipes. Campus ministry, am I right? Yeah, you guys can come to college. We'll have fun every time. So when you look at this, and then you look at, can you see that? Squint one eye, maybe. By comparison, and that was only 30 seconds, right? But you get a bit of a sense of what it would be like. So even for a very small, thank you, sir, that would make me absolutely crazy if I'd have gooey grape hands the whole rest of this time. So you get a sense of how much would go into even accumulating a very small amount of juice. So usually for my mom, this is like, if she's going to do some jelly, this is a multi-day process, and that's with like modern day conveniences, right? So you got your big pots, and you've got your electric stove, and you do all of that sort of stuff. And can anyone attest, anyone that's made jam, it's usually like, it's a multi-step process, yeah? Like there's a lot involved, and she's got all of those modern conveniences. Could you imagine what it was like making wine back then? Bro, I bet that was a lot of work. The hours and hours and hours that went into it. Now, don't get it twisted. My mom wasn't making like alcoholic jelly. Like, that's not what my childhood was. That's not what I'm talking about. But if she let her jelly like sit out for a little while, if she just kind of like left it out under normal circumstances, not any kind of controlled environment, what would happen to that jelly? It'd mold, wouldn't it? It'd go bad. And the same thing would happen to this biblical wine process. They didn't have refrigerators. They didn't have any way to kind of keep it cold or secure or whatever. So basically, they put all of this work into getting as much wine as they possibly could. And then because they couldn't keep it cold, often what would happen is that it would begin to mold. Can I just make eye contact with every 25-year-old and below man in the room? If it's moldy and you find it in the fridge, throw it out. Throw it out. It's not worth it. I remember a broccoli and cheese casserole one time many years ago that did me awful. Don't do it. We all know you don't eat mold, yeah? It doesn't matter how, don't eat around it. Throw it out. Throw it out. But what would happen to their wine is it would start to mold, and because of how much work they put into it, and they do want it, what would happen is they would scoop the mold out. And then what would happen as a result is their original amount of wine would then be decreased by half or so, because, right, you're getting all the mold and the gross, and then what was left is slightly alcoholic, slightly fermented, right? But they wanted the whole amount, not the half amount. So then what they would do is they would add some water or vinegar or some mix of that to try to get it back to its original volume. All of that wrapped in a bow was their picture of good wine. So a little bit of grape juice, mildly alcoholic, mostly kind of diluted with vinegar. Anyone just like look at a bottle of vinegar and be like, yeah, I want some of that. That apple cider vinegar diet, please, that's rough, right? We don't do that, but that was their wine, right? Little water, little vinegar, there we go. But we're not even talking about good wine in the story, are we? Do you see the passage where the coordinator of the wedding makes a description of the wine? What does he say it is? He says, best, doesn't he? He says, this is the best wine there is. The best wine, the prized wine from back in the day, was fresh squeezed. If I trusted your grubby hands, I'd drink this right now, but I don't. But they would have loved fresh squeezed juice. A brand new batch. Did you hear that? The best wine was fresh, it was sweet, and because it was fresh, there was no fermentation. There was no need to take anything out. There was no diluting. There was and then therefore it was not alcoholic. It hadn't molded. There was no need to dilute it. Cool? So this is the best wine. Sweet, delicious, fresh. So add to that whole equation, Jesus produces this incredible best wine. Add to the whole equation that the jars that he serves out of are essentially large public bathtubs. Yeah? Be honest. Do you ever get out of the bath and you're like, okay, I'm out of the bath, drying off. Look at the water and be like, oh yeah, I want to drink that. Do you ever do that? No. Counseling services can take care of that. We'll get you some help, right? No, you don't do that. No one would do that. But that's essentially what Jesus is flexing, is that these tubs, these big jars, were essentially these really gross things. But out of them, listen, out of them comes the sweetest wine the coordinator of the wedding had ever tasted. That's interesting. So not only does Jesus turn water into wine, it's the sweetest, best wine, and I'm going to serve it to you out of a public locker room shower, right? Like he's just being like, Son of God, what's up, right? Like he's really setting a dramatic presentation. But here's my favorite point. Here's my favorite part. You ready? Who planted the vines for Jesus' wine? Wait. Who did all of the back-breaking work to prepare those vines to bear fruit? You know that the average grapevine takes 2 to 3 years before it's producing any fruit. And then on average, the older the grapevines, the better fruit they produce. So those big chunky boys that we had right here, they're mature grapevines. Who took hours and hours to grow and tend the vines to get them to the place of bearing fruit? Does it say who labored in the sun picking how many thousands of grapes were necessary? Does it say who cleaned them? Does it say who crushed them? Does it say who caused them to spill their blood, essentially? A sweet, delicious juice, blood separated from body, offered up to them as a gift to those at the wedding. A gift that was sweeter than anything they knew. They didn't pay anything for it, none of them. And the majority of them didn't even know they were getting it. Just a little more wine at the wedding. You have to see the parallel. You see, this is Jesus' first miracle. He broke the mold of what their traditions taught the Messiah would be. And then he's beginning to lay groundwork for everything the new kingdom to come was about. Everything that he endeavored to accomplish with his life. Here's the point. Jesus contrasts the emptiness of Jewish tradition. Jewish preference, our preference, with the sweetness of rich relationship with him. Something that we could never earn, but is a gift that he willingly offers to us. What Jesus offers is always sweeter to what we hold on to. What he's extending to us is more important than our learned behavior. What he's extending to us is sweeter than what we've practiced and we've allowed to become normative in our lives. Do you know what the Bible calls learned behaviors? Not all of them, but some of them. Do you know what it calls them? It calls them sin. Little things that we pick up along the way that honor what we want, how we want it, when we want it. If you boil down all sin, I think you'll find the same thing. What I want, when I want, how I want. It's preference. It's our tradition. We feel entitled to. And what Jesus is offering in his first miracle is not just a little more wine at the wedding, save the dignity of the bride. How small. But what he's offering is that what I have and what I'm offering to you is sweeter than what you hold on to. So then my question to you this morning is really, really simple. What? What do we cling to? What do we hold on to? What preferences are embedded in the way that we live and that we walk and that we believe? Ones here and now, ones from long ago, ones we chose on purpose, ones that seem to choose us. What are they? You see, preferences and beliefs are often the hardest thing for us to release. Can I be honest with you? I love working with university students because they don't have their minds so made up about what everything is that they're not willing to learn and grow. You are a much harder audience than my university students because you sit here and you're like, change me. You know what's crazy? It's easy for us to look at the Jews and be judgmental of them. But if Jesus walked through that door right now and he challenged all the things that you believe and that you know to be true, would you surrender those things to him or would you nail him to a cross? My experience is, as I go to churches, bro, we'd nail him to a cross like that. Don't come in here telling me I need to let go of the way I'm living. Don't come in here telling me that things are wrong in my life. I've been doing it this way for a minute, thank you. My mama did it this way. I watched my grandpa do it this way. Don't come in here with new teaching and new theology that's trying to change the way that I am. And Jesus doesn't. He just says, what I've got is sweeter. It's sweeter, man. But the crazy thing about a hand is, this is kind of fun. You ready? Give me a grape. Go ahead, just one. Okay, how about another one? Here, let's try again. Maybe it's different. Let's do the same. Oh. Can you receive what he has when you're already holding on to what you've got? We can't. There must be an exchange. There must be a willingness to release the thing that we cling to and the thing that we hold on to. That's my invitation to you this morning. Would you be willing to search your heart for any of the things, the preferences or the traditions that maybe somehow along the way, intentionally or unintentionally, we found ourselves clinging to and maybe even worshiping? That if Jesus showed up and says, hey, I want that thing, would you release that tradition? Would you release the emptiness of that preference? I've got something sweeter. Would you guys stand with me? My question for you is there anything in your life today holding you back? Things that maybe you have attached value to that Jesus might see differently. Lean in with me. Don't let me lose you. Because if you've not tasted that sweet, sweet wine that Jesus made, if you've never tasted it before, or maybe you haven't tasted it in a long time, or maybe you haven't even tasted it yet this morning because like kids were acting crazy on your way to church and you were rushing, or man, you just had like a hard thing last night. Maybe it's been a minute, or maybe it hasn't even been today that you've tasted that sweet, sweet wine. I want to encourage you. This is hope. This is encouragement that the sweetness of relationship with Jesus, what he's offering to us right now, is sweeter than anything we might hold on to. You know, when Alejandra, like once every 10 years when we have a fight, it's easy for me to like hold on to that, to hold it for day after day after day. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we can hold those things until we no longer recognize that we are. And they become a part of us. So simply this morning, I want to invite you. I'm going to play a song in just a second. And I want to invite you to do